My name is Evelyn Walker. People call me Eve, and I'm 43. I spent 20 years running clandestine psyops in places the average tourist can't spell, bled beside men who never made it home, and carried classified nightmares that still jolt me awake. Yet nothing, not roadside bombs, not sniper fire, prepared me for the day my own brother rose in a California courtroom, jabbed a manicured finger toward me, and snarled. She never served a single day. She's just a fraud. In that instant, the air tasted of varnished wood and betrayal. Reporters leaned forward like vultures scenting fresh kill. The fluorescent lights hummed louder than helicopter rotors over Kandahar. And somewhere inside my scar-laced shoulder, a splinter of shrapnel throbbed as if warning. Incoming. Incoming family fire. If you think that's brutal, buckle up. Over the next half hour, I'll pull you through every landmine of deceit my bloodline laid at my feet until I turned their trap into the perfect ambush. Before we dive into that minefield, smash the subscribe button, hit like, and drop a comment telling me where you're listening from. Trust me, you'll want front row seats by the end. You'll see a CEO in handcuffs, a mother's pride crumble on live TV, and a digital paper trail so damning it made federal agents sprint into a civil hearing. Ready? Let's rewind to the moment the first fissure cracked the Walker dynasty. Picture coastal Monterey at the tail end of a damp January, gray surf gnawing at basalt cliffs. I just hung my army dress blues, still smelling faintly of sandstorms inside the cedar closet of the weather-beaten cliff house Dad left me in his will. Dad always believed in clean lines the property for me, the family hotel empire for my older brother Douglas, a comfortable trust for our baby brother Mason. Fair, simple, surgical. Dad was still warm in the ground when Douglas called a board meeting to rebrand our boutique chain as Walker Heritage, and my mother, Marilyn, polished her pearls for the press photos. I sent them congratulations from the porch swing and thought that would be enough. 3 weeks later, a courier shoved a thick white envelope under my gate. Notice of civil action. Douglas and Marilyn alleged I forged every set of orders, every combat citation, every evaluation in my official record, tricking Dad into favoring me. They wanted the house, damages, and public retraction. At first, shock felt like altitude sickness head pounding. Lungs refusing air, then came a colder clarity. I'd briefed generals, negotiated hostage releases, hacked insurgent radio chatter. Surely I could handle one narcissistic sibling and the mother who minted him. What I hadn't foreseen was how fast the smear campaign would metastasize in the age of cancel culture. Overnight, local bloggers splashed headlines like "Decorated Hero" or "Stolen Valor Queen." My favorite cafe stopped spelling my name on the foam. The Veterans Association paused my membership pending verification. Each subtle exclusion sliced deeper than any battlefield wound. During those weeks I lived off caffeine, painkillers, and restless pacing across salt-bleached floorboards. The harder I clenched the folder of notarized service documents, the louder the what-ifs hissed. What if the public never trusts proof? What if uniform truth can't outshout viral gossip? One storm-bitten April night, I slumped behind the wheel of my Jeep outside the cliff house, rain drumming the windshield like hostile gunfire. My phone pinged non-stop CNN, Fox, podcasts begging for hot takes, but I hovered over the decline button, knuckles white, a single pill rattling its empty bottle in the cup holder like mock applause. That was when Mason's hesitant knock startled me. He looked smaller than I remembered. Hoodie drenched, eyes big behind fogged lenses. Without a word, he pressed a flash drive into my palm. I found Dad's backup server, he stammered, and other stuff. You should see it. My pulse spiked. Mason, the family chameleon who avoided conflict the way most people avoid open sewer lids, was picking a side. or at least planting a question mark. Inside the Jeep's cabin, the metallic tang of possibility cut through hopelessness. What Mason delivered wasn't just a lifeline, it was a live grenade. I spent the next 72 hours barricaded in the study, shoulder screaming as I hunched over code with an old comrade, Major Claire Patel, now a JAG attorney whose gratitude dated back to Mosul 2017. The drive contained emails proving Douglas and Mom drafted a new clarified will weeks after Dad died, complete with forged signatures, spreadsheets of crypto transfers from a so-called veteran charity Douglas had launched Walker Heroes Foundation into offshore wallets, and worst of all, an NFT marketplace listing doctored images of my very own bronze star for auction. Item description crowing. Bid now. Own a piece of American valor. My stomach lurched, equal parts rage and disbelief. In PsyOps, we study moral injury when core values are violated so brutally your psyche fractures. Seeing my metal reduced to a digital trinket for profit was that moment crystallized in pixels. If I'd been plotting a kinetic raid, this was where I'd request air support. Instead, I called Claire, and she looped in Colonel Samuel Green of CID, an investigator reputed to keep an unmarked file on every dirty donor in D.C., Green admitted, voice low. He'd already sniffed around Douglas for potential charity fraud, but lacked a trigger. The counterfeit NFT built on a literal war decoration met the federal threshold for crime in progress. All we needed was timing and a stage. Douglas had given us both. So here's the chessboard as June bled into July, Douglas basking in PR spotlights, Mom scripting interviews about my troubled daughter, Mason spiraling in anxiety yet secretly forwarding fresh server logs to me, Green pulling financial threads, and me, well, I sharpened patience like a bayonet. Publicly, I maintained radio silence, watching comment sections devolve into gladiator pits. Privately, I built a digital kill box. Every fraudulent transaction pinpointed, every forged PDF annotated, every metadata timestamp bookmarked. I wasn't out for blood, I was out for truth. But truth, I'd learned overseas, sometimes needs shock and awe to be heard. Remember, stay tuned. In the next segment, you'll witness the precise moment our family's perfect facade shatters live, on the record, with federal marshals slamming doors before anyone can bolt. Trust me, you don't want to miss the look on my brother's face when the handcuffs click. I grew up in a house where every polished surface reflected the Walker crest, but none of us ever saw the fractures beneath the shine. Dad was the gravity that kept our orbits steady. A restless dreamer who built boutique hotels, yet still found time to teach me how to read terrain maps by dusklight. Mom, Marilyn, played the immaculate hostess, all soft smiles and harder expectations. Her fear of public shame tucked beneath layers of Chanel tweed. Douglas absorbed her priorities like a sponge, basking in every approving glance. Mason and I hid in the margins, trading secret eye rolls while the adults discussed occupancy rates over roast beef. The night I turned 10, Dad led us onto the Monterey Cliffs to watch 4th of July fireworks bloom over the bay. I remember Mason's glasses fogging as he whispered that the colors looked like planets colliding. I remember Douglas scoffing and calling us sentimental. Dad slipped me a wink and said, "Eve, one day the sky will blow apart in front of you. Hold your line. That line is about to stretch till it snaps." By high school, I'd mastered the art of invisibility, straight A's, track captain. Zero drama, yet every success only highlighted Douglas's destined throne. Mom praised his debate trophies. His handshake deals with long-stay investors, while asking me whether camouflage prints were just a phase. The afternoon I enlisted, she clutched her pearls like I'd hurled them into mud. Douglas smirked and muttered, "Enjoy playing soldier." I left anyway, dragging a duffel and Dad's words like talismans. Boot camp recut my marrow. PsyOps doctrine rewired my perception of truth. War carved grooves behind my eyes. But 37 firefights and 1 Bronze Star later, the shrapnel buried in my shoulder still hurt less than that smirk. What I didn't know then was how deep his grievance would burrow, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Dad's sudden stroke last January cracked the family shell wide open. In the will reading, his attorney revealed the simple split. Douglas got the business. Mason, a trust. I, the cliff house that smelled of brine and cedar. Douglas's jaw clenched so tight, the vein in his temple pulsed. Mom's smile froze mid-polish. They hosted a press brunch 2 days later, toasting legacy stewardship while I spread Dad's ashes into the Pacific and promised I'd guard whatever he left stone. Memory, or meaning. Yet, even as the tide carried him away, Douglas was drafting a more lucrative future, a doctored codicil, a phony charity, and a plan to paint me as the unstable veteran who seduced an aging father into bad decisions. Mason watched from the corner, chewing his lip raw, and I mistook his silence for indifference instead of terror. That misread would cost us both. The smear machine launched with surgical cruelty. Anonymous Reddit threads spliced my deployment photos with captions like cosplay queen. Local talk radio hosts questioned why no one could find a public DD-214, and a blue-check influencer demanded Congress punish stolen valor grifters. Each ping on my phone felt like incoming artillery. Each skeptical glance in the grocery aisle reopened invisible wounds. PTSD isn't always flashbacks. It can be the thud of expectation that everyone, everywhere, is about to doubt you. Still, inside that fog, I sensed patterns. Article timestamps matching Douglas's PR calendar. Bot accounts boosting Howard fraud vet within minutes of his interviews. PsyOps training whispered that narratives leave fingerprints, and fingerprints lead to operators. The through line pointed home. I could break, or I could counter-script. Guess which route a combat officer chooses? Claire Patel answered on the first ring, voice low, remembering Mosul say the word. Walker, Colonel Green, wary at first, confessed he'd taken hush money from Douglas years earlier, but kept copies insurance. Mason, shaking, started funneling me server backups at 3 a.m., while Mom slept unaware. When Finn Alvarez surfaced with receipts of NFT sales tied to my Bronze Star, the final puzzle clicked. Counterfeit valor, pumped through crypto wallets into offshore vaults. Green drafted an emergency federal warrant. But we needed Douglas publicly lying under oath to trigger simultaneous seizure orders. The civil trial on September 15th became our D-Day. Every message, every bank hop, every forged signature queued on my encrypted drive. I rehearsed testimony, calibrated pain meds, and visualized Dad's fireworks inverted explosions collapsing inward, sucking oxygen from my brother's empire. The courthouse doors are about to swing open, and I'm walking in unarmed except for truth, which is why Part 3 will begin the moment the judge calls my name and the countdown clock starts to bleed seconds. The bailiff's voice ricocheted off marble as he announced, Case 22 CV 597 Walker v. Walker. My boots regulation black, polished but civilian, struck the aisle like a metronome as I approached the plaintiff's table. Across the room, Douglas straightened his $1,000 blazer. Mom folded gloved fingers with cathedral calm. Mason hovered 2 rows back, shoulders folded in on themselves, as if he could hide inside his own ribs. Tom Fawn leaned bang Helen Morrison, adjusted her bifocals, and began the dry formalities. But my pulse had its own soundtrack. 8 minutes until the Cayman wallet's final transfer. 8 minutes until Colonel Green's team hit execute. 8 minutes until the Walker crest shattered in public view. Under the polished oak, I slipped a thumb drive into the security slot of the court laptop. Eyes never leaving Douglas. He offered a crescent moon grin that once disarmed investors. Yet, in the fluorescence, I saw sweat glinting at his hairline. The judge invited opening remarks, and his lawyer pounced, painting me as a wandering fantasist who exploited her dying father's grief. Every defamatory syllable slid across lacquered wood and lodged beneath my skin. But anger is easier to weaponize when you let it simmer. I let it stew and took mental notes of each provable lie, stacking them like claymores for later detonation, because the first blast would need maximum shrapnel. When it was my turn, I rose slowly, letting the room register the brace on my left shoulder, a silent exhibit of sacrifice, then stated only that the plaintiff's claims were factually impossible and electronically disproven, minimalist, surgical, baiting them to overextend. The judge asked whether I wished to introduce preliminary evidence. I declined, requesting instead to cross-examine Douglas first. His counsel smirked, confident their timeline of my alleged desertion was airtight. They rolled out a glossy poster board annotated with arrows, dates, and a forged psychiatrist's letter diagnosing me with delusional deployment syndrome. I counted how many jurors flinched. 3 did, which meant the lie had teeth. Douglas took the stand radiating corporate poise, recounting invented memories, my erratic behavior at Dad's bedside, my secret calls to unknown numbers, my supposed threat to expose the family if the will wasn't adjusted. Each tale was a mirror image of his own scheme, projected onto me with chilling accuracy. PsyOps 101, accuse your enemy of that which you fear being accused. As he spoke, I noted Mason's knees bouncing under the gallery bench. The kid looked ready to either bolt or vomit. My attorney, Claire, leaned in and whispered, "Timer at 4 minutes." I tightened my grip on a legal pad where I'd scribbled the final blockchain hash, ink still wet, heart sinking to the ticking clock. Cross-examination began, and I sliced through Douglas's confidence by degrees. First, the easy cuts, discrepancies in college attendance records. Vacation photos time-stamped during periods he claimed to be nursing our father. He parried with smug quips until I unfolded an email he'd sent Mom 2 weeks after Dad's stroke. Subject line: revised asset flow. His eyes flicked to the screen. The jurors saw the same flicker and smelled blood. I pressed, "Did you personally draft this spreadsheet showing projected crypto donations via Walker Heroes Foundation?" He stammered about consultants. "So you can't confirm the spreadsheet?" I asked. I mean... He fumbled. The judge raised an eyebrow while Claire slid me a note. 2 minutes. My collar felt suddenly tight. Not from nerves, but anticipation. Somewhere beneath the courthouse, Green's agents would be checking their watches. Then came the psychiatrist's letter. I handed Douglas a copy, asked him to identify the signature. He claimed it matched Dr. Linda Blackwell. I projected a verified e-signature from Dr. Blackwell's actual affidavit, mirror perfect, except for one glyph out of alignment. "Can you explain?" I asked, voice level. "Why the lowercase g in this forged note contains a loop characteristic of a commercial typeface last updated March 2025, whereas the real signature predates 2019. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Douglas's jaw worked, but produced only silence. Objection, technical minutiae. His lawyer barked. Overruled. The judge replied, eyes narrowing. Claire's phone vibrated message read only. Execute, 1 minute left. My veins thrummed like power lines in a storm. Yet my face stayed soldier still. I thanked the witness and returned to counsel table, requesting permission to introduce rebuttal evidence crucial to immediate matters of federal jurisdiction. The judge agreed. I plugged the thumb drive into the court laptop. Screens around the courtroom flickered alive with a live blockchain explorer window. "Your Honor," I announced, "what you're seeing is transaction ID 0x7A9. In-progress funds originating from Walker Heroes Foundation's public wallet are, at this exact moment, being laundered through a Cayman mixer, violating 18 U.S.C. 1956. Numbers flashed, confirming transfer speed. Douglas's attorney lunged for the power cable, but 2 U.S. Marshals at the door stepped forward, the emergency warrant already in their hands. For a heartbeat, the entire room froze. A collective suspension of breath that felt like the second before an IED detonates. And in that silence, Tom Fan Morrison spoke only 3 words. "Close the doors." Behind me, the wooden panels groaned shut. Metal latches sliding home. Reporters shouted. Jurors whispered. Mom finally turned to Douglas with an expression that mixed horror and recognition. I straightened, meeting Mason's wide eyes. He nodded once, a tremor of relief breaking across his face. Yet even as steel cuffs clicked around my brother's wrists, I knew the emotional blast radius hadn't finished expanding. Reputations would splinter. Alliances would reshuffle. And my mother, still unindicted, had cards left to play. Which is exactly where the next chapter of this reckoning begins. The doors had barely slammed before the courtroom detonated into pandemonium. A swarm of reporters battering the sealed exit with microphones, while marshals ushered jurors to a side corridor. But my focus tunneled onto Mom. She sat statue still, Chanel hat askew, eyes ricocheting from Douglas's cuffed hands to the frozen wallet address glowing on every monitor. And in that rigid posture, I sensed gears already turning. Marilyn Walker never surrendered a narrative without a counterstrike, which meant the real information war was only dawning. In the underground holding suite, a fluorescent hush replaced the media frenzy. Douglas paced behind glass, jaw twitching as green itemized charges: wire fraud, money laundering, document forgery, each count hammering fresh dents into the Walker brand. Yet he clung to a single thread: Mom will fix this. The phrase repeated like a malfunctioning radio beacon. And I realized his strategy hadn't changed since childhood. Break the vase. Blame the draft. Wait for Mother to pay the glazier. A cycle about to collide with federal statutes. Though his faith in her resources hinted she'd stored assets beyond the accounts we'd frozen. Assets she could weaponize next. Mason met me in a side hallway, pupils dilated, breath hitching. He asked if Douglas would see daylight again, and whether Mom could really be prosecuted. I answered honestly, minimum sentences were stiff, investigations ruthless. But nothing was sealed until indictments crystallized, which left him vibrating between relief and dread. A pendulum swing I recognized from nights he hid under my bunk during thunderstorms. And before I could reassure him, 2 FBI analysts swept him away for a formal statement, his shoulders drawing inward as doors clicked behind, leaving me with the metallic taste of promises I still owed my little brother. Outside, coastal fog swallowed the courthouse steps, yet camera flashes stung like tracer rounds. Finn Alvarez planted himself at the barricade, eyes blazing with righteous hunger, shouting that the next edition of his exposé would trace a philanthropic super PAC funneling dark money from Walker heritage straight into congressional races, a bombshell he swore implicated Mom as treasurer of an unregistered branch. Proof that her veneer of philanthropic martyrdom masked systemic corruption. And his certainty carved another notch of responsibility onto my spine. Because exposing Douglas had been survival. But taking down Marilyn would uproot the last thread of family Mason believed he could salvage. Claire drove me back to the Cliff House, wipers sweeping drizzle across windshield while dashboards ticked through emergency alerts. National outlets had splashed my PTSD-tinged stare beside Douglas's mugshot, and comment sections now swung like pendulums from apologies for doubting to venom over destroying your own kin digital turbulence. I ignored, except for one statistic. Walker Heritage stock price, free-falling 13% by sunset. A plummet that could trigger hostile takeovers, lost pensions, staff layoffs, collateral pain that wasn't my target yet, would stain my conscience unless I redirected the shrapnel toward the architects instead of the innocent employees trapped beneath our surname. At midnight, the Pacific hurled salt against century-old shingles while I scrolled through Dad's archived voicemail. Among birthday wishes and hotel repair reminders, A file labeled Family Trust surfaced his voice. Weary but resolute, documenting a contingency clause he'd tasked his lawyer to enact if evidence of financial exploitation ever surfaces, effectively empowering the estate executor to seize company voting rights from any implicated heir. The lawyer had died months before Dad, clause buried beneath corporate amendments. But the audio remained admissible, a legal tripwire capable of severing Marilyn's control if made public. Yet releasing it would sever Mason's last tether to their mother. And the moral weight pressed into my sternum like body armor soaked in rain. Sleep was a mirage. I spent dawn drafting a letter to the hotel board outline of a rescue plan transferring operations into employee stock ownership, preserving jobs while stripping the Walker name, an act of triage designed to inoculate innocence from the fallout. But to execute it, I needed Mason's sign-off as trust beneficiary. When he arrived, eyes rimmed red, he admitted the FBI had traced 6 shell core to Mom's private banker in Zurich. Indictments imminent. And he asked in a whisper whether saving the company meant erasing their mother entirely. I answered that accountability wasn't erasure. Yet the line felt brittle even to me, and his silence at the kitchen island stretched so taut I feared it would snap into betrayal anew. He finally spoke, "If we do this, she'll hate us forever." And I replied that love premised on silence wasn't love at all. A long exhale left his lungs, and he signed the memorandum. But the pen shook so violently, blotches stained the paper, a Rorschach of loyalty dissolving still. Signatures secured the board meeting set for 48 hours later, where I'd played Dad's voicemail. A grenade tossed into polished mahogany. Though before we could coordinate, Claire called Marilyn had entered the federal building voluntarily with a team of crisis lawyers. Rumors swirling she intended to flip on Douglas to spare herself prison. A gambit that could rewrite plea deals and undercut our employee ownership proposal if she negotiated shareholder immunity first. And just like that, the tempo jumped from tactical to rapid fire once more. I stared at the brittle dawn through salt-streaked glass. Dad's words echoing, "Hold your line," but lines shift in war. Sometimes you advance. Sometimes you burn ground so the enemy can't claim it. And the decision looming over the next 24 hours would determine whether Walker Heritage emerged as a worker-run phoenix or collapsed under maternal self-preservation. A decision I had to force before Marilyn rewove the narrative. Which is why the next scene unfolds not in a courtroom, but in the boardroom where our dynasty was born and, if I succeed, will be reborn without its crown. Damp wind slapped my face as I crossed the hotel's executive sky bridge, a glass artery suspended above Monterey's dawn traffic. Every step echoed like a countdown to detonation. Inside the penthouse boardroom, 12 directors whispered over plunging stock charts while legal aides refreshed news tickers that screamed, "Walker matriarch cooperates with DOJ." At the head sat interim chair Aaron Cho, once Dad's protege, now visibly torn between fiduciary panic and fading loyalty to our name. He nodded for me to speak, but I kept the flash drive in my fist a moment longer, scanning faces for fractures. If even 3 votes swung my way, the dynasty's core would liquefy. No one exhaled when I finally said, "Play recording." Suspense thickened like coastal fog, clinging to every suit sleeve. Dad's gravelly voice filled the room. He outlined the contingency clause, cited patterns of exploitation, invoked employee stewardship as safeguard. The directors shifted, eyes darting to Aaron, then to the blank seat reserved for Marilyn. I hit pause just before Dad's last line. "If blood forgets honor, let the house belong to those who keep it standing, and let the silence sharpen until a coffee spoon clinked loud enough to startle its owner." I proposed immediate conversion to an ESOP, directors retaining advisory status, public rebrand to Harborstone Hotels. The plan needed 75% approval. Numerically, it hinged on 2 undecided members, both longtime allies of my mother. Yet her absence suddenly felt strategic rather than defeated, and the room knew it. Someone cleared a throat, stalling. Right then, the door swung open and Marilyn walked in. Immaculate except for the DOJ visitor badge dangling like a scarlet letter. Gasps rippled, even Erin stood. She regarded me no anger. Only clinical calculation, then distributed folders stamped Resolution B that promised capital infusion from a hedge fund in exchange for retaining the Walker banner under new compliance oversight. In essence, sacrifice Douglas. Absolve herself. Keep the throne. Directors skimmed projections glossy with optimistic EBITDA. Greed flickered behind tired eyelids. I countered by projecting Finn's unreleased findings super PAC money, falsified invoices, a web linking hedge fund benefactors to the NFT laundering scheme, evidence the DOJ hadn't yet seen. Several jaws slackened. Marilyn's composure faltered for the first time. Her voice, when it emerged, trembled just enough to reveal cracks. She claimed I was leveraging stolen data. I replied, "Truth isn't stolen when it belongs to the people you defrauded." Her lips pressed into a bloodless line. We moved to roll call vote. Erin said my proposal first. 2 hands shot up the HR chair, worried about layoffs. And Mason, whom I'd named proxy, lifted his with a steadiness that belied last night's tremors. A 3rd hand rose from an operations director whose son served in the Navy. Empathy overrides dividends when your kid wears a uniform. Marilyn's side found 4 allies fast. 3 members hesitated, eyes ping-ponging between her coffers and my dossier. I released the final lever, a notarized pledge from regional managers representing 73% of staff, vowing to stay only under employee ownership. Labor shortages already bled the industry. Director knuckles whitened around pens, one by one. 2 more hands tipped toward me. The tally nodded 6-6 deadlock. Erin, as chair, held tiebreak authority. He removed his glasses, rubbed the bridge of his nose, and whispered, "Terrence taught me hotels are built on trust." He raised his hand for the ESOP. My chest didn't swell with triumph. Relief landed like exhaustion after a 20-mile march. Marilyn looked less defeated than exposed, as though fluorescent lights had peeled glamour from bone. Before she could regroup, FBI agents, alerted by Finn's streaming article, entered with fresh subpoenas targeting the hedge fund circle. Directors scattered signatures on transition papers, protecting themselves before the contagion spread. In 10 minutes, the Walker crest vanished from legal letterhead, replaced by Harborstone's lighthouse logo, irony not lost on anyone that a beacon now guided workers, not heirs. Yet I knew victories never seal overnight. Outside, Mason leaned on the railing overlooking the lobby atrium, knuckles white. "Tell me we didn't just torch everything," he murmured. I answered, "We burned the rot so the beams stay standing." He asked whether Mom would forgive him. I offered no platitudes, some questions only time answers. His shoulders sagged. But when employees downstairs burst into spontaneous applause at the news alert, a fragile half-smile tugged his lips. Still, a tremor rode the air. Marilyn wasn't handcuffed, only cornered. Her lawyers adept at plea bargain gymnastics. I reminded myself wars end in treaties, never absolutes, and prepared for appeal motions sure to follow. Yet dusk framed the hotel facade in rose gold, and for the first time in months, my tendons unclenched slightly, holding space for cautious hope. That night on the Cliff House porch, Pacific wind whipped salt into new rosebuds I'd planted beside Dad's empty Adirondack chair. I replayed the day's audio gavel slams, board votes, faint cheers, each sound, a stitch closing an old wound. Pain still lanced my shoulder, an eternal souvenir, but its rhythm no longer dictated my pulse. Instead, quiet gratitude pulsed for Claire's unwavering counsel, Finn's obsession with truth, Green's decisive warrant, and Mason's fragile bravery. I drafted a press statement framing the takeover not as vengeance, but restoration. Social feeds lit with hashtags had honor over profit. Yet comments also mocked family traitor. Proof scars of public doubt heal slower than corporate ledgers. I shut the screen, choosing moonlight over algorithms. Before bed, I found an envelope slid under the door, no address. Just my name in elegant cursive. Inside lay Mom's pearl necklace, the clasp broken, and a single line in her handwriting. Some legacies choke. No threats, no pleas, just brittle acknowledgement. I pocketed the pearls, unsure if they symbolized surrender or a warning, but their weight felt lighter than resentment. So I set them beside Dad's folded flag, artifacts of a past now archived. The horizon pulsed with lighthouse beams, Harborstone's new emblem, and waves hissed like applause fading into the dark. I inhaled salt, exhaled decades of silence, and sensed the next tide approaching. Because healing, like the ocean, never truly rests. When dawn bleeds over the bay tomorrow, investigators will comb through hedge fund ledgers, employees will receive welcome packets as co-owners, and Marilyn will decide whether to fight a losing war or salvage dignity. As for me, I'll testify once more, then drive to the Veterans Center with coffee and a plan to teach digital defense against smear campaigns, turning my scars into armor for others. The story isn't glamour, but it is proof you can survive betrayal, outwit greed, and still choose to mend instead of reignite. And if that willingness to rebuild ever falters, I'll replay Dad's dusty recording, hear his gravelly faith in those who keep the house standing, and remember that sometimes the most radical revenge is simply handing the keys to people who deserve them. The House of Walker is gone. The harbor light is just beginning to rise. And somewhere beyond the surf, another family is learning that honor, once lost, will always find a new name to wear, chapter ready to turn. My name is Madeline Carter. I'm 34, and 2 days ago a perfumed ivory invitation reminded me that in my mother's eyes, I'm just a clerical mistake waiting to be deleted. 8 years of radio silence, no calls, no birthdays yet. Suddenly, I'm cordially invited to my little sister's $1 million wedding in Boston's historic public library. The same sister whose hashtag perfect life has eclipsed every family photo that once showed my face. I'm a lieutenant colonel in U.S. Army intelligence. On foreign soil, I can chart supply lines in my sleep. But at home, I'm the ghost in every frame. The hook Mom plans to sell the Richmond house my father left me quietly, unlawfully, on the very day she marries Sophie into old money prestige. She thinks I don't know. She thinks duty made me mute. She's about to learn what silence really sounds like when it snaps. Before I unspool our private war, do me and yourself a favor. Hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and drop a comment if you've ever felt underestimated by the people who were supposed to love you most. You're about to ride shotgun on a 30-minute mission packed with espionage-level prep, maternal manipulation, and a live-streamed reckoning that even the press couldn't script. Ready good. Buckle in. I drive south down I-95 under sheets of late October rain, wipers stamping out a nervous metronome while a Coltrane sax line, Dad's favorite, crackles through the speakers. Every green exit sign flashes another unwanted memory talent shows, where Sophie got roses. West Point graduation, where Mom straightened my collar like a costume she couldn't wait to burn. The house sits on a quiet Richmond street, lined with magnolias that have already dropped their leaves, a skeleton of spring. Much like the family waiting inside, I kill the engine, letting the silence settle heavy in the dark. For one breath, I'm 13 again, clutching Dad's old sketchbook beneath the porch light, telling him I'll be an artist. For another, I'm 26, folded into a dusty MATV in Kandahar, shouting coordinates as mortars bloom too close. Those lives collide in my chest, twin heartbeats out of sync. And when I finally shoulder my duffel, the front door creaks open on its own. She didn't even lock it. Why bother? When she's certain nothing worth stealing lives here anymore. The foyer smells of lemon polish and curated emptiness. Gone are the candid birthday shots, replaced by studio portraits of Sophie in ivory gowns, Evelyn at museum galas, the pair of them frozen mid-laugh like a luxury brand campaign. My boots click over hardwood until Mom's voice slices through the dim Madeline. You're early. The guest room's full of centerpieces. You'll take the attic. No hug, no welcome, just an instruction pitched like a courtroom directive. My pulse stays steady. Afghanistan taught me not to react till the target exposes its flank. I nod. Climb narrow stairs past cardboard boxes labeled estate staging, and find a dust-heavy attic where a cot waits beside a stack of unsold memories. In a cracked mirror, I catch my own reflection metals locked away. Hair damp, eyes hard. The attic window frames the street lamp glow, and for a heartbeat, lightning flicks white across the glass, revealing a for sale packet tucked beneath a ledger, my name nowhere in sight. So it's true tomorrow, she'll sign away the last physical proof Dad ever loved me more than her curated narrative. Morning brings the rehearsal brunch in Mom's marble kitchen, tension plated between Benedict and Mimosa. Evelyn introduces me as Maddie, who handles logistics near D.C., the verbal equivalent of bubble wrap around classified steel. Sophie, flawless in a linen jumpsuit, pats my arm like a pity volunteer. Hope you've got something sparkly to wear, she whispers. Press will be everywhere. I smile thin, noting Dalton Green across the island, my former infantry lawyer, now fiancé to the girl who never knew I dragged him from a burning convoy. His eyes hold a recognition he's sworn to keep secret. When Mom toasts family loyalty, my glass hovers mid-air, fingers numb with the static roar of battlefield memories, overlaying hometown hypocrisy. Fuel hits the fire at 11:13 a.m. when I duck into Dad's broken lock study and overhear Evelyn on speakerphone with her lawyer. Wire the deposit once the deed is cleared. Buyer wants quick possession. And Madeline need never know. Her voice is sugar over rust, and the sound splits something inside me like shrapnel finding the soft spot under Kevlar. That's the moment pity dies. That's the moment mission parameters shift from attend to expose. I text Rachel Lee, retired Secret Service, childhood ally, and the only soul allowed to see me crack. They're closing tomorrow. I send, thumbs trembling. She replies with coordinates. A roadside diner off Route 5, 1 hour. When we meet. Steam curls off weak coffee as she slides a thumb drive recorder across Formica. One-party consent in Massachusetts. She reminds me. Bug the rehearsal dinner. Trace the deed transfer. Then we burn their fairy tale set piece to the ground. My jaw unclenches just enough to whisper. Copy that. The diner's neon sign flickers in the rain like a staccato promise justice served all night. Back at the house. I lie awake on the attic cot, watching headlights crawl the ceiling. Plotting vectors, witness lists, digital dead drops. Dad's sketchbook rests on my chest, pages of unfinished charcoal bridges he dreamed I'd design. I flip to the last page, blank, and for the first time in years, the pencil moves. I sketch the Boston Public Library reading room where tomorrow's vows will echo, shading the marble lions that will watch every lie unravel. When the graphite dust settles, the lion's eyes seem almost alive, daring me to roar louder than the organ prelude. A floorboard groans. Sophie's silhouette pauses at the attic door, uncertainty haloed around her, but she retreats without a word, unaware that by this time tomorrow she'll question every story Mom ever fed her. I close the sketchbook, feeling the weight of an unfinished bridge become the blueprint for a public reckoning. And as dawn bleeds pink over the magnolias, one resolve crystallizes. They invited a ghost. I'll arrive as a spotlight. The next morning, I'm already halfway up Interstate 95, tailing the charter bus that ferries flower arches and harpists toward Boston, when Rachel's text pings Mike disguised as boutonniere. Battery 8 hours. Don't get caught. I answer with a photo of the bronze service medal pinned to my lapel, the perfect decoy casing for her custom transmitter. And let Siri read the lawyer's voicemail that just dropped. Captain Leibowitz has located a sealed probate addendum naming me sole heir. Notarized the week Dad died. The file is locked behind a courthouse firewall, but a hearing can be expedited if I produce compelling evidence of malicious concealment. Evidence is exactly what tonight is for. And the fact that Mom scheduled Sophie's rehearsal dinner in the same city as Dad's favorite bookstore feels like poetic alignment. My GPS recalculates around construction. Raindrops smear the windshield into watercolor remorse. The charter bus turns onto Beacon Street, while my rental slips into its wake like a shadow no one noticed until it swallowed the light. I park beneath the lion-guarded steps of the public library, press 2 fingers to the lapel mic, and tell Rachel. Opening act begins. As the screen of my phone blinks 00001 recording, and the organ inside starts its first tentative scale. 3 crystal chandeliers later, I'm seated at the far end of a 12-meter mahogany table, the only guest without a designer place card. Evelyn claims it was a printing oversight, but the vacant smile she sends me says the erasure was deliberate. Sophie is center stage in a silk tea-length dress, effortless, immaculate, the room orbiting her like she's gravity itself. Dalton stands just out of spotlight range, greeting donors with a handshake practiced to appear genuine, yet every third glance he finds my eyes. And I read the unspoken. I haven't forgotten Kandahar hiding behind his cordial grin. Champagne flutes clink, a string quartet murmurs Vivaldi, and my boutonniere mic captures it all. Mom coaching Sophie on post-wedding press hits. A trustee from the museum congratulating Evelyn on securing that Richmond property. An uncle joking that I probably guard parking lots at the Pentagon. My pulse remains anchor slow, but inside my skull, the mortar whistle of memory grows louder. I catalog each insult like grid coordinates timestamp. Speaker. Infraction until Mom raises her glass for what she calls an intimate family toast. She thanks the Greens for lifting Sophie into a lineage that values excellence, praises Dalton's heroic service, then turns toward me with a smile as sharp as piano wire, and to Madeline, who reminds us that every family needs quiet supporters behind the scenes. The room laughs politely. My throat tastes of iron. Sophie doesn't meet my stare, yet her shoulders hitch as if she's bracing for recoil. I lift my glass, tap its rim twice the prearranged signal, and miles away Rachel begins a real-time backup upload. The quartet segues into something baroque, and the chandelier light fractures across lead crystal tears that aren't mine. The dinner dissolves into brandy and networking, which is my cue to ghost through the service corridor toward the archival basement. Mom has chosen this venue for its Instagram grandeur, but she's forgotten libraries are temples of recorded truth. Down a marble stairwell, I find a dusty staff computer terminal. Rachel texts a courthouse login string, and within minutes, the sealed probate PDF blooms on screen, Dad's signature shaky yet firm, leaving the Richmond house to me with full right of disposition. Overlaying that is a forged quitclaim deed transferring the property to Evelyn, dated 3 weeks later, witnessed by a now-retired clerk named Clara Jenkins. The Discover tab clock hits 2:17 a.m. Above me, the rehearsal party has thinned to clacking heels and floral foam rustle, but the audio feed still rolls, catching Mom's voice bragging that as of noon tomorrow, the buyer wires stage 2 funds, and Maddie will be none the wiser. I copy every file, email them to an encrypted vault, and return topside where Sophie stands alone amid half-dismantled centerpieces. Her mascara has smudged. Whether from champagne or conscience, I can't tell. "Is it true you're selling Dad's house?" she whispers. My silence answers. She exhales like a balloon losing shape, murmurs, "I didn't know," and clutches her engagement ring so hard the diamond pits her palm. Behind us, Dalton watches, jaw set, and the air between the three of us tightens until the event planner kills the lights and we scatter like fugitives from our own lives. By 3 a.m., Rachel and I are hunched over laptops in a rental car lot, heater whining while torrents lash the windshield. She splices the evening's cruelties into an 8-minute reel, overlays the forged deed, then cues the Kandahar footage General Garrison declassified at my request. Night vision chaos. Me dragging Dalton through dust and tracer fire. "We dropped this during the vows," she says, thumb hovering over a queued media server link. I shake my head too easy. "We drop it the moment Mom signs the property transfer." With every network reporter already present, Rachel grins wolfish. Thunder rattles the glass. The countdown to civil war now ticks in measurable seconds. Tomorrow, Evelyn Carter will stand beneath carved marble angels, believing she's curated perfection. Unaware that a single lapel flower and a librarian's forgotten login have turned her palace of narrative into a powder keg wired to my heartbeat, and the detonator is set for the exact moment she thinks the ink is dry. At 7:45 a.m., the wedding day flickers awake beneath an anvil-gray sky. And every breath I take feels measured against the countdown. Rachel overlaid on my phone, 05/12/23 until signing, 07/44/37 until vows. I'm in a borrowed suite 2 blocks from the library, steam from the shower fogging the mirror as I press my neatly ironed dress blues against the hanger. The uniform's weight is familiar. But the purpose today is new, not battlefield camouflage, but a spotlight potent enough to melt decades of curated frost. A soft knock draws me out. Captain Aaron Leibowitz slips inside, coat damp, eyes blazing with the righteous fury only a lawyer convinced of clear fraud can muster. He plants a manila envelope on the desk, court-stamped summons for an emergency injunction to freeze any sale of the Richmond house pending inquiry. "Judge will sign the moment we file," he says, "but it needs a live trigger evidence of intent to defraud delivered before witnesses." I tap the lapel mic. "Evelyn Carter provides that at 12:01. Aaron nods, hands me a fountain pen Dad once gifted him after their last fishing trip, and leaves without another word, the door latching like a starting gun echoing down marble halls that haven't yet heard the roar coming their way. By 9 a.m., I'm seated in a corner of the bridal prep suite, ostensibly to calm Sophie's nerves, but really to monitor the open channel feeding Rachel's live editing bay. Makeup artists swirl around my sister while Mom rehearses her speech about 2 families merging legacies. Sophie keeps catching my reflection in the vanity mirror. Her eyes whispering apologies, her lips won't dare voice. Guilt is chewing her bone-white nails, yet denial still shrouds her like tulle. Evelyn, oblivious, fusses with a diamond bracelet that could pay 3 semesters at West Point, bragging to a bridesmaid about closing the Richmond chapter this very lunchtime. Fresh start for everyone. The phrase fresh start lodges like glass in my throat, but I swallow the taste of blood and slip the slim injection mold of Rachel's secondary transmitter beneath the bouquet ribbon. When the florist arrives to whisk the flowers to the ceremonial signing lunch, my evidence tracker travels with it, heartbeat quiet, ready to eavesdrop as Mom delivers her final betrayal toast. Sophie finally speaks, voice feather thin. "Maddie, do you ever regret choosing the Army over this?" Her hand sweeps at layers of silk and curated approval. I meet her gaze, remembering dust storms and civilian tents stitched with bullet holes, and answer, "Not for a single heartbeat." The blunt honesty lands like thunder, and a crack appears in her perfect posture, the first visible fault line screaming that the quake hasn't even started. 11:47. Rachel texts signing luncheon underway in the map room. I slip from the suite, boots muffled on Persian runners, and descend a service lift into staff corridors smelling of lemon oil and old bindings. Through a cracked door, I glimpse Evelyn flanked by 2 museum donors playing witness. She flourishes Dad's forged deed like a magic trick. Pen poised. My mic picks every syllable. Once payments clear. We refurbish, stage, and list at double. Maddie won't contest she never loved that house. My lungs seize. But rage is cold fuel now, sharpened to a needle. I press the fountain pen Aaron gave me between thumb and forefinger. Its ink is permanent. Unlike the lies spilling 3 meters away, camera shutters click as the witnesses sign digital proof of collusion. And that's my cue to step back into shadow. Upload indicator on my watch turns green. Rachel has the audio, the stills, the timestamps. She replies with a single word, nail. Pulse steady. I walk toward the grand foyer, uniform case in hand, and each stride erases another decade of imposed invisibility. 12:38. I find Dalton in the colonnade overlooking Copley Square. Cufflinks abandoned, eyes rehearsing vows he knows he can't deliver in ignorance. "You sure about this?" he murmurs. I hand him a duplicate USB marked failsafe. Tell him if anything happens to me, he plugs it into the organist's laptop during the recessional. He pockets it, breath fogging in the cold, then clasps my shoulder soldier to soldier before returning to his role inside the gilded facade, soon to become a tribunal. His touch leaves a warmth I haven't felt since the desert, and beneath it a tremor of what-ifs I refuse to entertain until mission complete. 1:05 The organ prelude swells. Guests glide to velvet-roped pews, and I stand in a hallway flanked by lions carved in Italian stone, trading my black suit jacket for blues, heavy with medals that once stayed hidden for national security. Today, those ribbons are ammunition. I secure the final button, smooth the aiguillette, and take one last breath that tastes of dust, lemon polish, and the electric hush before artillery. Beyond the arch, ushers close the doors, the world inhaling as Sophie appears at the opposite aisle in cascading ivory, a living symbol of everything Mom curated, but the detonator strapped to my chest is already counting down footage frames. And when the officiant asks for objections, the room will learn how loud a family secret detonates when truth pulls the pin. ChatGPT said, "The organ holds its last trembling chord. Sunlight puddles through stained glass saints, and the officiant's baritone fills the vaulted hall. Should any among you know a reason these two must not be joined, speak now." The final syllable hangs like a crystal droplet, and in that stillness I step forward from the shadow of the western arch. Dress blues flashing, service ribbons a kaleidoscope of battles no influencer has ever live-streamed. A murmur ripples across the pews, half disbelief, half recognition as I march to the aisle's center line and salute. Gasps scatter like birds. Camera phones tilt. Evelyn's smile calcifies mid-cheekbone. Sophie's veil quivers. Dalton exhales as if a weight he's carried since Kandahar has just been set down. I drop my hand and pivot toward the officiant. "I do have cause," I announce, voice echoing under the Romanesque arches. And the first is that this ceremony stands on theft. Every heart in the room seems to sink to a single double beat, waiting for the next shot. Stage lights pivot instinctively, bathing me in gold while casting Evelyn into sudden chiaroscuro. She tries to rise, but Dalton's face, now carved from granite, subtly blocks her path. I tap my lapel. Rachel's 8-minute reel floods the side screens. Audio piped through ceiling speakers engineered for Bach, but now weaponized for confession. The opening frame, Evelyn at yesterday's luncheon, deed in hand, boasting that I never loved that house. The map room's fresco backdrop gives her betrayal a Renaissance grandeur she never earned. Gasps turn to shocked exhalations. A trustee from the museum half stands, then sinks, cheeks blazing. Clip 2 overlays the forged quitclaim side by side with the original will. Dad's signature flickering like a ghost calling roll. Clip 3 erupts into night vision green mortar flashes, dust plumes, and me dragging Dalton across a cratered road while enemy tracers stitch the sky. The hall goes breathless. Someone whimpers. Sophie's bouquet slips from her grasp and hits marble with a hollow clap that sounds exactly like denial cracking. Evelyn finds her voice a brittle shriek. This is malicious editing. Take it down, she lunges for the AV console. But Aaron Leibowitz, already stationed beside it, intercepts her with a court order raised like a shield, motion to freeze assets and initiate fraud inquiry. He declares, his calm slicing through her hysteria. The officiant, thrown off liturgical rails, can only whisper, order, please. While half the guests livestream the meltdown, Evelyn shifts tactics, aiming venom at me. What kind of daughter does this on her sister's wedding day? The question ricochets until I answer. Steady as when I coordinated air support, the kind you tried to erase. The words land heavier than any artillery. Evelyn staggers, clutching the podium. Sophie steps toward her mother. But fear roots her feet. I reach into my pocket, withdraw Dad's fountain pen, and place it on the altar. Mom, this is the only signature that matters today, your confession on a corrective deed. The pause is absolute. Chandeliers stop shimmering. Even the organist's fingers float midair. Evelyn's eyes dart to the exits, to lawyers, to the judgment scrawled across every face. But there is no safe room big enough to hide from a truth on widescreen. Sophie's voice finally cuts through the static, small, cracked, but sharp enough to draw blood. Mom, is it all true? Evelyn opens her mouth, but the reel's final seconds answer for her yesterday's call. Crystal clear stage 2 funds at noon. Maddie will be none the wiser. The library's oak walls seem to inhale. Collective outrage heats the air. And in that suffocating silence, Evelyn collapses into the front pew. Mascara tracking grief she never intended to feel. Sophie kneels beside her mother, tears spilling, not sure whom she's comforting. And I sense the audience's empathy pivot. Not to the matriarch, but to the daughter, now gagging on betrayal's stench. Yet mission parameters don't allow indulgence. I lift the court order, step to the lectern, and state the new reality. The Richmond property is frozen. An independent executor will oversee Dad's estate. The sale is dead on arrival. The officiant, regaining composure, asks if the couple wishes to proceed. Sophie looks to Dalton, who answers with a slow, tragic shake of the head. Vows dissolve before they're spoken, glittering like sugar in hot tea, and guests rise, unsure whether to clap, gasp, or pray. Reporters swarm the aisle. Microphones bloom like night flowers. Evelyn's public persona crumbles in real time, every lens magnifying the fissures. She reaches for the bracelet that once symbolized ascension, but now feels like a shackle. It slips, diamonds scattering across marble, tiny meteorites marking the fall of a self-appointed queen. Security ushers guests toward the reception hall to catch their breath. But I know the real aftershock will explode off-site. Rachel is already pushing footage to 3 investigative bloggers and the local NBC affiliate. As I descend the altar steps, Dalton intercepts me, presses the unused failsafe USB back into my palm. You didn't need a backup, he says, voice edged with gratitude and grief. You never failed, for one fragile beat. The war veteran and the would-be groom stand suspended between battles lost and battles survived. Then he turns to follow Sophie, who has retreated down a side corridor, lace train dragging like surrendered colors. I exit through a service door into raw November air, lungs burning with the sudden void where adrenaline used to live. Sirens wail 2 blocks away, ambulance. Not police, and my blood goes cold, remembering Mom's whispered threat to end it all if reputation died. I sprint, heels hammering cobblestones, until I find the ladies' lounge, Evelyn sprawled on a chaise, pill bottle overturned, Sophie dialing 911 with shaking hands. For one horrific second, I see Dad again on that hospital gurney. Life leaving faster than goodbye could form. An instinct overrides fury. I kneel, tilt her chin, check pulse faint but present, then shove 2 fingers down her throat. Bitter foam spills as she retches and sobs. Ambulance techs barrel in. But before they load her gurney, I press the corrective deed against her clipboard. Fountain pen clipped atop. Sign it, I demand. Or contingency files hit every board you've ever served. Her eyes, glassy with shame and Valium haze, dart to Sophie's terrified face. A tremor shakes her hand as ink meets paper. The pen scratches across the line Evelyn L. Carter and the house. At last, is mine in more than memory. EMTs wheel her out. Flashbulbs pop. Questions swarm. But I stand rooted, deed in hand, unable to name the emotion flooding my veins. Victory, yes, but threaded with a grief I hadn't budgeted for. The collateral damage of burning a dynasty to rescue a spirit. Outside, rain begins its slow lament, washing confetti into storm drains, erasing evidence of a ceremony that never crowned. I glance up at carved marble lions, now wet shimmering in twilight. Their stoic faces seem to nod approval. Guardians of narrative reclaimed. Rachel appears at my elbow, earbuds still chirping newsroom pings, and asks softly, "Ready to leave the battlefield?" "General," I look back through the arched doorway, where Sophie, framed by amber sconces, clutches her torn veil and meets my gaze with something new understanding perhaps, or a plea for another chance. I give her a nod, not of forgiveness, but of possibility, then turn toward the siren glow where our mother rides into a night devoid of spotlights. As we step into the rain, Rachel cracks a half smile. Phase 4 complete reconstruction begins. Yet, inside me, the clang of hollow victory hasn't settled. The next chapter waits unwritten, and its first sentence demands more courage than the one that just toppled an empire. ChatGPT said, "The Monday headlines detonate before sunrise. Socialite exposed for inheritance fraud. During daughter's wedding, decorated officer sister unmasks plot. Cable pundits dissect the footage. Forensic accountants pick apart the forged deed. And museum donors pull out of Evelyn's pet gala within hours." By noon, the Board of Trustees issues a statement suspending the communications director pending audit. Her curated empire collapses like sugar in rain. But the mother I revived in a hospital corridor remains in detox, cut off from the comment section she once controlled. That irony tastes bittersweet, yet necessary. Because restitution without reflection is just a prettier cage, and I refuse to weld new bars for anyone, not even her, until acknowledgement is real. Richmond feels smaller when I unlock the front door Dad built with his own calloused hands. The magnolia branches scrape the roof. Paint peels at the windowsills, and the air is thick with dust. But the floors still groan the same greeting they gave teenage Maddie sneaking in past curfew. I step onto hardwood worn to velvet, and finally allow myself something I denied through every operation and courtroom ambush. A single, uncontrollable laugh, half joy, half disbelief that a war fought with satellites and subpoenas has delivered me home intact. Uncle Sam appears from the workshop, sawdust in his eyebrows, apology trembling on his lips. Yet one look at the deed framed in my hand, and he simply wraps me in an embrace that smells of cedar and absolution. We spend the afternoon cataloging boxes Mom never opened, Dad's flight manuals, Sophie's kindergarten doodles, my abandoned sketchbooks dog-eared to dreams I once deferred. Each relic we dust becomes a stitch repairing a bloodline Evelyn tried to sever. And every hammer tap repairing shingles echoes the same vow: this house will never be sold. Not for profit, not for image, not for anything less than love. 2 weeks later, I stand at a podium in uniform before a lecture hall of cadets at West Point. The commandant introduces me as Lieutenant Colonel Madeline Carter, combat strategist and ethical leadership consultant, a title that fits more snugly than any commendation. I begin not with fire missions, but with the story of a forged deed, explaining how integrity erodes in half-inch increments of silence until a family almost forgets what truth sounds like. The cadets lean forward, eyes wide. They expected war stories, and they get them. But they also get a reminder that the battles we fight at kitchen tables may test our oath harder than any firefight. When the Q&A ends, one plebe lingers to ask if justice ever feels heavy. Always, I answer. But so does armor until the first round it stops. He nods, posture sharpening as though the metaphor itself added plates to his vest. I leave campus lighter. The past, once a rucksack of classified ghosts, has become curriculum for future defenders. And that conversion feels like the purest form of victory. Meanwhile, Sophie withdraws from social media, trades designer showcases for sessions with a therapist who specializes in codependency and public image trauma. She emails me tentative snapshots of canvases she started painting watercolors of half-rebuilt bridges that dissolve into skyline. I reply with honest critique and an invitation: come to Richmond for Thanksgiving. No cameras, no press, just wood smoke and forgiveness offered in the language of renovation. Her typing bubble flickers for an hour before the response lands. Yes. But can I bring extra sandpaper? Some surfaces need more time. I smile because that admission is bigger than any apology. It's evidence of her first true blueprint, drafted in humility rather than hashtags. Evelyn's audit concludes with a negotiated resignation, mandatory restitution of siphoned charitable funds, and a 5-year ban from serving on nonprofit boards. The press calls it a downfall. The lawyers call it a settlement. I call it a perimeter where she can rebuild or self-destruct without further collateral. I do not visit her, but I send a letter brief, unsentimental, stating that rehabilitation begins when she stops defending the lie. Whether she reads it is her mission. I have mine. That mission unfolds each dawn as I sit on the restored porch rail, charcoal in hand, sketching sunrise across the James River. Rachel lounges in a rocking chair, laptop balanced on her knees, editing the documentary cut of our ordeal for a niche veteran-owned media outlet, when she mutes a raw segment of my courtroom testimony. Silence settles between us, comfortable, earned, and she asks, "You ever worry peace will bore you?" I consider the cracked paint we still need to scrape, the lectures scheduled, the bridge sketches awaiting color. Peace isn't the absence of action, I reply, tracing a line that will become a horizon. It's the first quiet room where your voice doesn't echo off lies. The pencil lifts, ready for the next stroke that turns charcoal into structure. And somewhere inside, I feel the blueprint of my future clicking into place with aerodynamic precision. Now, if you've stayed with me through every ambush of betrayal and every artillery burst of revelation, you know how heavy a truth can be and how deeply a lie can root inside the people closest to us. Drop a comment below. Tell me the silent war you're fighting, the inheritance of doubt you're ready to burn clean. Smash that. Like so the algorithm carries this story to anyone still waiting for permission to pick up their own pen. And subscribe, because next month we're diving into another family drama where a hidden adoption file rewrites an entire dynasty. Justice, it turns out, is a series, not a standalone episode, and you won't want to miss the next release. Remember when they try to erase your name? Sharpen your ink, align your sight, and write the ending yourself, scene fades. But your signature stays.